Hey, what's poppin', lads? It's Tristan, and recently I read volumes 1 through 15 of Blade of the Immortal, which is often considered one of the greatest samurai manga series of all time. So let's get crackin' and talk about it.
All women are queens. If she breathes, she's a god!
Alright, so with most videos, I usually start off by talking about what I like and dislike about the series, as well as, the story for a little bit. But I feel like with Blade of the Immortal, since a large part of my opinion revolves around the artwork, and since the artwork really kind of shapes my opinion about the series, I think that it's best to start off with the artwork and then move on to some of the other stuff afterwards. Alright, so I think that the artwork in Blade of the Immortal is decent overall, but the thing is, it's pretty dated. It's a pretty old art style, and I think that a lot of current readers who are more into the modern art style of manga might be a little bit turned off when they see it. Also, I do think that the artwork really ranges in quality. For instance, during the talking scenes, I don't think it really stands out too much, and it looks pretty simple and not really all that detailed for a lot of the scenes, but I do think that it really improves as the series goes on. And the improvement with the level of detail not only helps out make the manga look better, but it also helps distinguish the characters more, because in the early volumes I was very confused between which character is which, and a lot of the times Rin and Manji kind of blended in with the rest. With that being said though, I really do think that Samura really has a good understanding of how to draw human emotions, and I think that the emotional moments with Rin and some of the more tough and challenging moments with Manji are really shown well through the facial expressions. What I really wanted to talk about though was the fight scenes. What really stands out, what really makes the series, what really is the filling, the great stuff, the star on top of the tree, is the fight scenes. And I'm going to be upfront, I'm going to be completely honest, not sugarcoating this. If it weren't for the fight scenes in Blade of the Immortal, this series wouldn't be nearly, not even nearly as good as it is. Because, and I'm not saying that to discredit Blade of the Immortal, because the series is great. I'm saying that mainly to give a huge pat on the back to the fight scenes, because the fight scenes in Blade of the Immortal are really unlike many other things I can think of. Not only does it feel like I'm watching a movie, not only does it feel like these scenes are in motion, but it really does show that Hiroaki Samura is a great manga artist. If people can draw well of characters talking and standing still, that's one thing. You can be a good artist just drawing that stuff. But if you can draw really good fight scenes, that to me is the true test as to whether someone is a good manga artist. Alright, and before I go on to another topic, I really do want to illustrate my point on this, because I would be sitting there, I'd be like, alright, let's read another chapter, and then I would get to a fight scene, and I'd be like, alright, let's pop in the bookmark here, good spots, put that in. And I would flip the page. Before I knew it, I would finish a volume. And then I'd finish another volume. And maybe if I got a good night's rest the night before, I'd be like,
once you realize you don't have to sleep anymore, your mind goes wide open.
Alright, so now I want to talk about the dialogue, and it was pretty well done overall, because Samura really did have some good parts where he would just weave in exposition through the dialogue, and it would sound pretty natural, and it wouldn't sound something that was too forced. And I really think that's hard to do, because some manga series really suffer from that, where they'll just come straight out and say exposition, or say a key story moment that could have been done better, I guess, through conversation, or even shown, and even though I think the dialogue was handled really well, I do think that the whole, show don't tell rule could have been done a little bit better, because in some moments there would be a whole volume spent talking about a plan, but when the plan was actually carried out, it would just feel really awkward and not really, needed, I guess, because it would feel just kind of repetitive, because they already said what the plan was going to be pretty in-depth, because they spent a whole volume, or at least a good amount of a volume, talking about it, and when it actually happened, it would just be like, okay, I think we get it, you know, you could have just explained it briefly and then had the rest filled in when the action was actually pursued. Alright, so I was editing the video, and I wanted to clarify that the whole show don't tell rule problem was really only in a few volumes. I know I kind of explained it sort of poorly, and it sounded like I was talking about the entire series, but that's not really the case, so yeah. Just wanted to put that out there. It's not the entire series, it was only really a problem that reoccurred every once in a while. Alright, so I guess next up on the agenda would be to talk about the themes, because, you know, there were some really, really good themes in Blade of the Immortal. The first reoccurring theme in Blade of the Immortal that really stood out was the one about Manji having to live with the shame of killing 100 men. And I think that this theme is very relevant to the time period, because, you know, back then in the samurai times, from my understanding, if someone failed a mission or, you know, brought shame upon themselves or their village, you know, they would take their sword and just, you know, off with themselves. And even though that was supposed to be something that was honorable, and it was supposed to show that back then they would rather kill themselves than bring shame upon their village or themselves, it really didn't come across like that, because, you know, I think that Manji, he really is trying to turn his life around in the series, and it really brings up some interesting questions, because Manji killed 100 men when he wasn't immortal, and then he was cursed with immortality, so to break that curse, he wants to kill 1,000 bad men to, you know, redeem himself. I think that when Manji first sets out to do this, you know, it's mainly just about him breaking the curse, but as the series progresses, he really does start to become a good person through and through, and that's really shown throughout the series. This series also does bring up some really interesting questions about whether people like Manji who have done such atrocities should be able to, you know, have the chance to redeem themselves, if they should have a second chance, or, you know, if they should just be branded a felon for the rest of their lives and just, you know, not really given anything to work on, I guess. Also, now that I'm talking about the story, I do want to bring up the point that even though the story is about Manji being immortal and trying to kill 1,000 men, that's not really what the series is primarily about. I think that the series is primarily about Rin getting vengeance on her parents and Manji tagging along and also kind of being a good person along the way, as well as Rin kind of discovering herself and what the cycle of hatred does. And I really think that Samura really hits the nail on the head when it comes to the philosophical questions and themes, and it's not really something that people talk about enough when talking about the series. I guess the last big thing to talk about in the series would be the characters. And, you know, there were some pretty good ones. There were actually some really good characters. We got Hyakurin, Onotsu, we got Rin, great main character. My main complaint, though, is I think Manji could have been a little bit better as a character. And I know a lot of people are gonna, you know, be all up in arms about that. And like I said, I've only read 15 volumes of the series, so maybe if the other half is really, really good with Manji, then my opinions will change about it. But as right now, I think it's pretty set in stone that Rin is a much better main protagonist than Manji is. Before I go to the conclusion, though, I do want to give a little bit of a, you know, a hot take on the series compared to another seinen series, because before I read Blade of the Immortal, I was asking so many people. I was, you know, going around going like, what series is better, Blade of the Immortal or Berserk? And the people who did answer, they were like, Blade of the Immortal is hands down better than Berserk. So I was expecting some top-notch, cream of the crop stuff here, and it was good stuff. I think that Blade of the Immortal is one of the greatest samurai manga ever made, from what I've read. But compared to Berserk, you know, we're talking about some medieval fantasy, you know, crazy all-out stuff versus, you know, samurai manga, and both are great, but Berserk is better. That's just the T-Dog hot take, though, so, you know, take that as a grain of salt for what you'd like. With all that being said and done, I think I'm going to end the video here, but I do want to say that I have some definite bangers planned, and, you know, including this video, I've only uploaded 7 videos in 2018, which definitely is something that was quite shocking to me when I was actually looking through my videos, but I'll say it now and I'll say it again, quality over quantity. I want to be on that grind, but you know, I do have a pretty spicy video idea for later in October. I'm not going to say too much about that now, but it's going to be pretty gosh dang spicy. Anyways guys, make sure to slap that like button, smash that subscribe button, press that notification button if you know you really like the bangers I've been putting out, and drop a comment letting me know what you think of Blade of the Immortal or this video, whether you've read it or not. And with all that being said, I will see you in the next video.